One of the challenges in any society is how to produce, distribute, and consume goods and services. We, as members of society, are tasked with organizing ourselves as we convert raw materials from nature into finished products and how we transform human capital and talent into services that we provide for our comfort and convenience. It is therefore important to understand these economic institutions. Let's look at the overview of today's topic. We will be discussing about the first, non-market institutions, second, market institutions, third, state-market relationships, and lastly is the international trade. From the sociological point of view, there are two ways to look at the value and purpose of economic institutions in society. You can either look at it from the functionalist perspective or from the conflict perspective.
The functionalist perspective views economic institutions as vital components of society because they are involved in the production, distribution, and purchasing of goods and services that are essential for survival.
They could refer to systems, agencies, and organizations, both in the public and private sector. They are involved in the production of food, clothing, and other material items that people need and want. The conflict perspective, on the other hand, argues that economic institutions emerge in order to benefit the ruling classes or groups. A major proponent of this perspective is Karl Marx. This perspective asserts that economic institutions are established by the ruling classes in order to benefit their group at the expense of ordinary laborers.
Reciprocity exists when there is an exchange of goods or labor between individuals in a community. This includes direct barter or simultaneous exchanges of goods. An example of this is when neighbors exchange food for labor rendered, or when farmers rotate among their farms to help in cultivating the land. Transfer is a redistribution of income that is not matched by actual exchange of goods and services. Example of this is donation or financial assistance from a richer relative. Redistribution is a combination of the features of transfer and reciprocity. It involves the collection of goods from members, the pooling of these goods, and then the redistribution of these goods among the same members.
A market system is the network of buyers, sellers, and other actors that come together to trade in a given product or service. The phrase invisible hand was introduced by Adam Smith in his book The Wealth of Nations. He assumed that an economy can work well in a free market scenario where everyone will work for his or her own interest. The unobservable market force that helps the demand and supply of goods in a free market to reach equilibrium automatically is the invisible hand. Market and prices are important features of the market system. A market is a mechanism and not necessarily a place which brings buyers and sellers together for a desired transaction. Prices, on the other hand, serve as signaling device to indicate the value of a good or service to both the buyers and the sellers and guide their actions on whether they should buy or not, supply more or less. Specialization is another requirement for a market economy. Critical to a market economy is the ability to produce goods and services efficiently. Human specialization is called the division of labor. Specialization contributes to the efficiency by taking the advantage of the differences in each and every person's abilities.
It is the trading of goods and services for other goods and services without using money. It is also the traditional means of exchange.
Market transaction involves parties who sell their goods and services in exchange for cash from consumers. A free market economy is one where the price of a good or service is determined by the forces of supply and demand. Supply is the available level of products or services provided by producers or sellers. Demand is the level of willingness of consumers to purchase. When demand is higher than supply, then we have a shortage. When supply is higher than demand, we have a surplus. Oligopoly is when there is only a few producer or seller, while monopoly is when there is only one seller. Examples of oligopoly are the mobile phone service industry, as well as the airline, where there are only very few service providers and oil companies. An example of monopoly are Meralco service provider in many parts of Manila, National Power Corporation, and Fortune Tobacco Corporation.
I like that.
Labor is considered as a commodity and as a producer good, since it is an input to the production of goods and services. The sellers of the service are the workers, while the consumers are the factories and the producers. The state, through government, comes in to regulate the prices of the service, which technically is in the form of the wages the workers earn. The state, as defined by the social thinker Max Weber, is a physical body that exercises monopoly of violence or legitimate control over the use of force within its territory. The minimum wage, which is determined by regional age boards, is the level below which no lawyer would be allowed to pay their workers. Monetary policy is the reduction in interest rates so to encourage investors to borrow money and invest in business to spur productions. Fiscal policy is when governments are encouraged to increase their public spending on infrastructures to further spur economic activity. A command economy or socialist economy is when the government takes over the functions of the market in producing and distributing essential goods and services. In this system, instead of the market forces of supply and demand deciding on what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce, a command economy relies on a central government. Tax is the primary instrument used by governments to redistribute income. It is compulsory contributions to government coffers, normally levied the workers' income, business profits, and consumption of goods and services in order to raise revenues for government spending. It is needed to raise revenues for the government, but they are also disincentives of efficiency and hard work. Government plays an important role in correcting the imbalance of the access of goods and services through the process of income redistribution.
Government purchases are expenditures in the private sector that utilizes economic resources and which yields domestic output. Examples of these are government purchases of fighter planes or construction of a mass railway. Both examples utilize the labor of engineers and scientists, as well as the use of steel, machineries, computers, and a host of other inputs. Transfer payments are government spending on the private sector that does not require a creation of any output. It is not a payment for goods and services, but a means of allocating income to achieve social ends. Examples of transfer payments are social security benefits, unemployment compensation, subsidies, and veterans benefits. Price support is the minimum legal price of a good, and which is typically pegged at a higher level than the prevailing market price. It is done to ensure guaranteed support to the workers of the agricultural industry.
International trade benefits nations because it enables economies to employ its resources in ways that increase its total output. But just like in market transactions that make place within a nation, there are still arguments put forward against international trade. One major issue against international trade is that it harms domestic industries and particular group of resource suppliers who cannot compete with bigger international peers. This calls for some government interference in free trade. Tariffs are taxes on imported goods, while quotas are the limits set on the quantity of imported goods that can enter a domestic economy. GATT, on the other hand, General Agreements on Tariff and Trade, is a multilateral platform of negotiation among participating nations which embraces the principle of equal, non-discriminatory trade treatment for all member nations, the reduction of tariff, and the elimination of all import quotas. Under the GATT or GATS, tariff on 1,000 different goods will be eliminated or greatly reduced.